حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله. وارض اللهم عن صحابتي والتابعين وتابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Dear brothers and sisters, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It is my pleasure to be your khatib today. And the topic that I chose for the khutbah initially, up until about midnight last night, was about Ramadan. And I was going to cover an angle that most of our esteemed khatibs don't talk about enough. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Qatanani, last week I had the opportunity to attend his khutbah, which I rarely do because I'm usually engaged somewhere. Was about taqwa, and he covered the topic really well. He explained very vividly that Ramadan has to translate into action. That Ramadan is not just about fasting and salah and Qur'an al-Quran and all of that. It has to change our behavior. That the effect of Ramadan has to reflect on our behavior. We have to be better Muslims when we exit Ramadan than we did when we entered Ramadan. Jazakallah khair. That was a perfect khutbah. You can go back and listen to it. And every other khutbah you're going to hear will probably cover the same topic. So I was going to speak about another benefit of Ramadan, which is the health advantages of Ramadan. Now, nowadays, the whole world, the health world is talking about intermittent fasting and autophagy. All these are topics worthy of Nobel Prize, literally. The man who came up with the theory of autophagy and how elongated or prolonged fasting makes the body very much destroy its cancer cells. And he proved that by extending Siyam beyond the 14, 15-hour period that it produces, it helps the body rebuild itself from inside. It scavenges the bad cells, the damaged cells in the body. So this is the gist of what I was going to talk about until the news broke out yesterday, and there is the indictment of our esteemed president. And I thought about it long and hard, should I talk about it or not? So that's the context. The context is that we are living through a period of political upheaval in what we call our country. I know some of us still say back home, back home. Well, I've been here 50 years and I'm still back home, saying back home. And some of you are here longer than that, and they're still referring to back home as if this is not our home. Well, let's reach an understanding that after 20, 30, 40, 50 years of living in a country, and having kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. My father just passed away. He had 67 children and grandchildren. Of course, Sheikh Rida Shata, I was telling him this, Jazakallah khair, I was telling him this, and he looked at me and he said, my grandfather, when he died, he left 180. I'm like, shut up. I mean, there are some among us who actually have many more than that. Here's what's interesting. All 67 are here. Where are they going to go? So, ya ikhwa, we need to learn to deal with events in this country as if they matter to us. We need to address them. We need to understand them. And more importantly, you and I are probably old. We are set in our ways. Our minds are made up. Our worldview is shaped up. It's very hard to change how we see the world. But what about our children? Our children, their life, there's a word in English that I learned not long ago. Their lives are discursive. بالعربي استطرادي. What that means is that it's progressive. They learn as they go. You don't give your son the Quran at age 12 and you check on him by age 20 and you find that everything's still the same. Nothing changed. He is still muwahid. He loves the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, and everything is the same. Let me tell you something. Surprise, surprise. Every single moment of our children's life, they are being hit on by the system, the environment that we live in. From the media, to the news, to the teachers, to the friends, everybody around them is trying to shape their thoughts. To the point that when the late Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, rahimahullah, I think he died recently, him and Taha Jabir al-Alwani, Jamal Barzanji, they started years ago the International Institute of Islamic Thought in Washington, Herndon, Virginia, back in the early 80s. And it has contributed tremendously to Islamic knowledge. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman wrote a book that became so attractive to young people that it's banned from most Muslim countries. It's called Azmatul Aql al-Muslim, the crisis of the Muslim mind. And the gist of the book is that if we are going, our problem is an intellectual crisis. That's what he says. That we don't think about our life and about Islam and about interaction with the world the way we should. That's his thesis. But then he offers a solution. And it's a 3-point solution. The first part we cannot do, which is to unify the curriculums. It's meant for Muslim countries, not for us here. Unless our schools in New Jersey, all 7, 8 of them come together and they develop a curriculum, that would be a step in the right direction. Good luck trying to do that, by the way. But Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, his second point, among the 3 points that he mentioned, which really fascinated me, he said the problem of the crisis of the intellectual Muslim is that many of our children are not proud of their Islam. Step number 1, if you want to bring Islam to life, and if you want to reinvigorate Islam, is to create pride in ourselves and in our children in their deen. And I'm not talking about getting a bumper sticker that says proud to be Muslim, like proud to be Irish, proud to be Palestinian. That's nonsense. That's just the symbolic part of it. There's a much deeper level at which we need to operate. At the level of the consciousness and the subconsciousness. Ya ikhwa, we need to teach our children how Islam has everything to do with everything around us. And it has to be done in a way that is smart, intelligent, and that they can relate to. I used to joke with my son-in-law every time I saw a word that has its roots in Arabic, like the word justice. I would say to him, justice is the same word as al-qistas. And he would lash at me and laugh and say, well, you're like Gus in my big fat Greek wedding. He's trying to tie everything back to the Greeks. And we would laugh about it and move on. But in reality, akhwa, and that's what I'm going to try to show in this short khutbah, there is a connection between what is going on in this country right now and our Islamic tradition. And I'm going to try to prove it to you today in this short khutbah. Dhul Faqar Ali Shah, Jazahullah Khair, was here. He gave a khutbah a few weeks ago, and he gave a workshop in which he talked about the influence of Islam on the Renaissance. The problem with that lecture is that it was very high level. It was intended for literally for master's and PhD students. Today's khutbah, I bring it down to the level where you can have a conversation with your kids. I'm trying to simplify the topics. Now, what is the significance of all of this? It's very simple. That if your child, your son, your daughter in college or in high school is asked to write a paper or even have a conversation with the other students and the teacher about what is going on, and that's what teachers do, by the way. Smart teachers, they talk about what's going on in our life. They don't talk about theoretical matters. They bring what's going on. They say, what do you think about the impending arrest of our ex-president? And your son has to stand up and say something. And unless you and I guide them in a nice, smart, intelligent way, they're not going to be able to do it. They just won't. So that's the significance. And hopefully, inshallah, the few points that I'm going to mention to you today will instill some pride in ourselves and in our children. I am motivated by a book that I read probably 50 years ago by Mustafa Sibai, rahimahullah, the great Syrian scholar. It was called Min Rawa'i'i Hadaratina, Our Amazing Civilization. I still have the book. From 50 years ago, I still have it. And I opened it this morning and I looked. And under the section on jurisprudence, at-Tashri', he mentions how Napoleon, in 1798, when he went to Egypt, that he made sure to copy the Maliki jurisprudence, al-Fiqh al-Maliki, that he copied it and took it back with him to France. But we're talking about 1800. This is way, way after the English common law, which guides our system in this country. So I did a little bit of quick research only to find out that a professor by the name John Makdisi, right here in the United States, I forgot which university, wrote a paper that is cited 200 times by other scholars. When somebody's paper is cited 200 times, that means it's an important paper. That means that people consider it their main reference. And by the way, ya akhwa, sidebar, the concept of citation was developed by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya. For those who are fascinated by Western scholarship and how everything you write, you have to cite it and say where you got the information, believe it or not, it's an Islamic concept. That's just a sidebar. So John Makdisi wrote a paper, and the title of the paper was The Influence of Islam on English Common Law. It's about 120 pages, it's a big paper. I downloaded it and started reading it, and it just blew me away. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. In the second khutbah, I'll talk about the founding fathers and how we also had an influence on them, part of what Dhul-Faqar Aisha spoke about when he came in. But in the first part, here's what we need to know, ya ikhwa. At some point, Normandy, which was part of France, they spoke French, they are descendants of the Vikings. They occupied England. They defeated England. They ruled England, what is today England, for 200 years. It's called the Norman period, when Normandy ruled England. It was called William the Conqueror. He conquered England and became the king of England. What's interesting is not what happened then. It's what happened a few years later in 1061. A king by the name Roger II became the king of Sicily. He occupied Sicily, Sicilia. And who was in Sicily, ya ikhwa? We were there. There was a thriving Islamic civilization in Sicily. It was connected to North Africa, to Al-Qayrawan, all the great universities, and they were applying the Maliki fiqh. الفقه المالكي كان مطبق في سيسيلي, في صقلية. This king was smart, ya ikhwa. King Roger II was very smart. Instead of antagonizing the Muslims, instead of burning the books like they did in Spain, when Ferdinand and Isabella in the 1450s, when they took over Spain, they burned millions of books. Literally, entire libraries were burned. Roger II was smart. Instead, he made a treaty with the Muslims. He said, I'll give you full autonomy. You can rule yourselves by your book. You can pray. You can do anything you want. Let's just be at peace with each other. and he set out to learn from them. He copied verbatim al-fiqh al-maliki. We're talking about 1061, hundreds of years before Napoleon showed up in Egypt, ya ikhwa. So many of us are quick to cite how Napoleon copied the fiqh al-maliki. It was much before that. It was 600-700 years before that. It was in the 12th century, in the 11th century, when Raja II copied the fiqh al-maliki, and he rebuilt the English common law, which is the foundation for our US law here. He built it based on the Islamic law. John Makdisi, in his paper, focused on three things. He didn't want to be a generalist. He wanted to be very focused. So he focused on three things. The definition of contract. What is a contract? A very important part of the legal system. The second thing was testimony, oral testimony, اللي هو الإدلاء الشفهي, الشهادة. The concept of oral testimony was not known in English law. They copied it from the Muslims, and the most important part, ya akhwa, is the jury system. The jury system is known to the West. They're beginning to talk about it. I saw a few news clips where they were asking each other, where do you think the jury system comes from? And they say, from Islam. Oh, how so? It was called Nizam al-Lafif. Al-Lafif is 12 people, normal citizens, that come together, they hear the case, they give their opinion to the judge issues the final verdict, and that's it. This is the jury system that the whole world runs in, the full democratic world. And where does it come from? It comes from Islam, from al-Fiqh al-Maliki. Jazahumullahu khairan, our brothers in North Africa, the followers of Fiqh al-Maliki. Again, why am I saying this? The reason, ya akhwa, I'm saying this is because some of us have no idea what's going on. They don't even watch English news. They're still watching Al Jazeera, which is fine. I watch Al Jazeera. They watch Musalsalat Arabiya. They watch all these ridiculous programs that are made, especially in Ramadan, so that they can deviate us away from Taraweeh and Salah and Siyam and Zakah and make us watch nonsense on Arab TV. Unfortunately, many of us are like that. There are some of us who are smarter than that and who want to know, and there are some who are so fascinated by the bright light of Western civilization that they forget or they refuse or they don't know how to make the connection to our deen. Ya ikhwa, I saw a clip by Waddah Khanfar, the founder of Al Jazeera, recently, it's going around right now, where he discusses how this world is in turmoil. And his conclusion is there is nothing that's standing on strong foundation in today's world other than the Quran. Everything is changing. All these grand views and philosophies and paradigms that are running the world, from liberal democracy to postmodernism, all these terms you hear thrown around, they are all shaky. They are all being challenged. Kalam fadi. Every one of these theories has its weaknesses and its strengths. The only thing that's standing on solid grounds is the Quran, the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. Allah Azza wa Jal is showing us signs how this world is falling apart. Not so that we can just sit there and watch like astounded, not knowing what's going on. It's so we can reflect on our deen, the value of our deen, and how we as Muslims need to teach ourselves and our children to be proud of our deen. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So ya ikhwa, the important part again of this khutbah is that we need to have a conversation with our children, especially those who have children that are teenage kids. And this conversation can start by simply saying to them, what do you think of what's going on? We should not resort to lecturing. Lecturing is not pleasant. Constantly coming down in a condescending way on our children and trying to show them that we know more. At some point, the child is going to start believing that he or she knows more than you do. And unless you can back it up with facts, You lose once, then you lose again. Before you know it, they'll stop listening to you. They'll start calling you the old man, literally. And I've heard that. Oh, the old man said this, the old man said that. We need to be smart. We don't have to know everything. We just need to provoke their thoughts. Ya akhwa, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when something went wrong, he didn't confront the people directly. He used the famous saying, "Ma balu aqwamin yaf'aluna kada wa kada." Why do some people do this and that? Why? To make the conversation simpler and easier to have. So that if somebody had done something wrong, he is not being accused. The Quran teaches us that. There's an ayah, if I can remember, Shaykh Abdul Hamid can correct me, where Allah Azza wa Jal says, "Inna aw iyyakum la'ala hudan aw fi dhalalin mubin. La tus'aluna amma ajramna wa la nus'alu amma an kuntum ta'malun." Sahih or la, Shaykh? In a debate between the believers and non-believers, not with you and your son, even then with the non-believers. The Quran tells us to say, "Inna aw iyyakum," you or us or you, are either guided or we're wrong. That's how the debate starts. By admitting that you could be right, I could be right. Instead of saying, "No, I know what I'm talking about." The Quran says, don't do that. "Inna aw iyyakum la'ala huda aw fi dhalalin mubin. La tus'aluna amma ajramna." Subhanallah. They accuse the Muslims of being criminals, dividing families, doing all kinds of mischief. And the Prophet ﷺ is told by the Quran to admit that to them, to say, fine, you call us criminals, we're criminals. لا تسألون عما أجرمنا. You're not going to be asked about our crimes. ولا نسأل عما كنتم تعملون. And we're not going to be asked about your deeds. He didn't call them crimes, even though their deeds are crimes. The Quran is teaching us how to pave the way to a good, friendly conversation. Ya ikhwa, with the non-believers, your kids and mine are believers. They deserve better than that. اذهبا إلى فرعون فقولا له قولا لينا. Ya ikhwa, the word layyin, layyin is like something that's malleable. It's like when you carry a dough in your hand, and it's soft and gentle. قولا لينا. The other word is وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. جادلهم, Allah Azza wa Jal says in our conversation with the non-believers, جادلهم من the تعلمتها من الشيخ الحنوتي رحمه الله. He taught us to us more than 30 years ago. جادل من جديلة. جديلة is a braid. The braid, one strand of hair goes around the other, and the other, there's no confrontation. They're not one braid being clashed with the other one. They gently go one around the other. جادلهم بالتي هي أحسن means find a different approach. If one approach is not working, bring another one, bring another one. Why would we do that? The significance is we will have better relationship with the other, no matter who that other is, and we will be able to do our main duty. ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي أحسن. We are implored by the Quran to do a much better job. Wallahi akhu, many times when we are talking to people about Islam, each one of us wants to be Ahmad Didat or Zakir Naik. We want to really score one. I'm going to pin him down. That's not how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spread the deen. These are exceptional people, and they are speaking to special audiences in a special setting. You and I don't do that. This is not our job. We're not good at it. So the most we can do is to have a conversation with our children and say, "Hey, son, you see the news? Yeah. What do you think?" Start the conversation. And at some point, the point is going to come up. "Oh, it's an amazing system, Baba. Back home. In Muslim countries, I've never seen a leader come to trial, no matter what he or she does. They kill their people, they do all these things, and they get away with it. They steal their resources, nobody does anything." They are fascinated. And this is where you need to bring my second point, which is how this country, the one that we call our own country, was founded by the founders on Islamic foundation. Dhul Faqar Ali Shah is a much better expert at this than I am. The only difference is I speak at a level where my children can understand. Zulfiqar speaks at a level where guys like me who are PhD level and graduate level can understand. And my challenge to him the other day, Samir was there, my challenge to him was, how can we bring this discourse, this conversation down to the high school level and make our kids understand? So in a nutshell, here's what he gave me a paper about 15 years ago, and I pulled it today. And in it, the title of the paper, which later on became 3 major books, is How Islam Influenced the Founding Fathers in this country. In a nutshell, in the 5 minutes remaining. Ya ikhwa, Jefferson is the one who wrote the Constitution. Everybody knows that. We all know that Jefferson had a Quran. And that Quran was used recently by Keith Allison to swear when he went into the Congress. The Quran is very well, it's preserved, it's known, it's in the Library of Congress, it's there. What a lot of people don't know is that Jefferson's Quran is marked. The ayat that are marked are mirrored exactly in the American Constitution. The verses that have to do with equality, مَتَّى اسْتَعْبَدْتُمُ النَّاسَ وَقَدْ وَلَدَتْهُمْ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ أَحْرَارًا, all this conversation about human rights and so on, he got it right out of the Quran. That's not enough evidence. Jefferson himself, his Bible, because he also had a Bible, is all cut up. You can go on YouTube and take a look at it. It's all cut up. Every verse in the Bible that violates a tawheed, he cut it out with a blade. And you can see that his Bible, probably 50, 60% of it is gone. It's all chopped up, it's taken out. All right, so how does Jefferson have anything to do with the Quran? Number one, there are several books that actually researched whether Jefferson was a Muslim or not. He was himself accused of being a Muslim. Number two, his closest friend and biggest influence on him was John Locke. John Locke was accused by all of his contemporaries, not now, his contemporaries, for being a secret Mohammedan. That was his biggest accusation. He was a Muslim, basically, a secret Muslim. Where did he learn all of this? This ties back to the lectures of Zulfiqar Ali Shah when he was here. It was in England. It was in England during the Renaissance. Oxford University, where John Locke was, all of their books and manuscripts were brought in from Syria, from Aleppo. Ya Rab, اتفرج, Karb, Halab, وباقي سوريا. Ya ikhwa, Syria and Aleppo was a shining beacon on the hill. It was a source of knowledge. With the Persian Empire and the Ottoman Empire and all of these, but Aleppo specifically, they used to go to Halab and they would bring manuscripts. So much so that the British monarchy made it mandatory that any merchant, any ship coming into England had to bring a manuscript from the Muslims, a book, a manuscript. And that was the fee. Nowadays, you pay dollars, you pay money. In those days, they didn't want money. They just said, bring a book. Those books are at Oxford University to this day. Zulfiqar Ali Shah didn't speak much. I wish he had more chance. I spent a lot of time with Zulfiqar Ali Shah in Milwaukee. He showed me photographic pictures of the manuscripts at Oxford University where no one has access unless he is a PhD student. In 91, he managed to enter the library to the manuscript section and take photographic pictures of those manuscripts, which shows them written in Arabic and in the margin translated in English. Those books became the foundation of the English Renaissance. Those books are the ones that were copied by people like Stubble and like John Locke, even Isaac Newton. People like that learned at Oxford. The Oxford leaders were students of Muslims from Aleppo and from Damascus, from all over the Middle East. To tie it back for those people who came late, why am I talking about all this subject? This sounds almost like a university lecture that I would be giving at Rutgers or NJIT. So I'm going to remind those that were here in the beginning and those that came at the end, the reason we want to have this conversation is for the benefit of our kids. We want them to be proud of their deen. This is not an issue of showing up. I'm proud to be from Mekhmas or Silwan or bumper sticker issue. This is a lot deeper than that. If they are proud of their deen, they will probably want to learn more about it. They'll probably want to know more about Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib with his encounter with the judge when he was challenged, and he sat in front of the judge, and the judge addressed him by saying, Ya Abul Hassan, and he said to him, why do you call me by my kunya, my honorary name, and you call the plaintiff by his first name? He didn't, that's how much fairness was there in Islam, ya ikhwa. Our children need to know that. And hopefully the pride in their deen will help them hold on to this deen as they should. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين استغفر الله. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين وأعلي بفضلك كلمة الحق والدين ووفقنا لما تحبه وترضاه يا رب العالمين. اللهم يا رب أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم. وأنت يا أخي أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
قم الصلاة. انفينا بالله عليك انفي.
استقيموا يرحمكم الله. استووا. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين. وإن عاقبتم فعاقبوا بمثل ما عوقبتم به ولئن صبرتم لهو خير للصابرين. واصبر وما صبرك إلا بالله ولا تحزن عليهم ولا تك في ضيق مما يمكرون. واصبر وما صبرك إلا بالله ولا تحزن عليهم ولا تك في ضيق مما يمكرون. إن الله مع الذين اتقوا والذين هم محسنون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون نحن أولياؤكم في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ولكم فيها ما تشتهي أنفسكم ولكم فيها ما تدعون نزلا من غفور رحيم. ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم. طلب مني إني أقدم لكم Islamic Relief. I know Islamic Relief for many years. I know its leaders, its founders. It's an organization that provides support for Muslims all over the world. They are here today collecting money for orphans. And ya akhwa, orphan sponsorship, especially in Ramadan, is a very important project. I know several others who are doing the same thing. All you have to remember is Hadith Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أنا وكافل اليتيم كهاتين في الجنة. I and the sponsor of a yatim are like these two fingers in Jannah. So I implore you to do whatever you can, inshallah, to support our brothers from Islamic